Okay, I've decided to put some spars made out of 1/8 inch ply, or balsa in this case, which actually is working okay as far as making a hole. I want to put these ribs in to give the bar that's inside some more durability and strength. So I've cut these, thanks to Current Dude off RC Groups, for the tip on how to make these approximately 4 by 1 1/4 inch ribs, shaped to the shape of the plane, basically, as you can see there. And to do it, you have to make a slit. That's right, you got to cut into there, make a slit into the wing, and then push it down in, which is what I've begun to do there. Probably one there, and then one here, and then one after the motor to support that bar, which is right running through here. Now, in doing so, the problem is the wiring is already in there. Since I was changing things around wiring-wise under here, I already went ahead and ripped it open. So basically, we're going to want this piece of wood to come through enough to fit that bar through with enough clearance that I can drill a hole straight through at the right spot. And then put all the wiring back in around it, or maybe make a channel for the wiring, underneath the wood. And that should do the trick. 3 on each side, and extra strength for the existing standard rod that comes with it. Okay, we're back. I have glued in the spars, and it was easier to make the hole before you actually shaped the size of the hole, or shape the size of the actual spars. Drill the hole into the wood first, and then draw the size you need after you've kind of figured it out. And as you can see, I had to gouge out this part here with a drill bit slightly to make some room for that. And then in the foam, I had to cut a slot in the foam and dig away from the front too, because this is excess wiring here that's on top that's normally pushed down in. And over here, same deal, slight gouge right there. And these guys seem pretty strong and stable. And if I come over here, you can see the finished product on the left side, or on the right wing. And that's the way it looks. Might need to sand this one spot here, sticking up a little higher than I anticipated. And then I'm going to re-laminate this whole section right here on top of the existing laminate. And that should do it. Forgot to mention, the original recommendation was to use 1/16 plywood, and all I had on hand was 1/8 balsa wood. So instead of doing 3 on the side, I just did 2 and 1/8 thickness, and it seems pretty good. Well, the first maiden test was a failure because there wasn't enough lift. Using the 2822 motors that only output 7 amps per motor, giving me anywhere from 14 to 17 amps at takeoff, was not enough, and she stalled and fell to the ground. So I have opted to go with 2830-11 Turnigy motors. These guys put out 20 or 21 amps, I believe, per motor and 210 watts of power. That, coupled with a 3S battery and now a 9x5 and counter-rotating this time, I'm going to go with counter-rotating props, is going to make for a more powerful takeoff, probably around 27 amps. So what I've done is I've taken out the old motors, and in doing so I ended up pulling out a lot of foam, almost to the point where it was down to the point where you could almost see through. Well, not quite that far, but it was pretty close. So what I did to compensate was I took some foam from the old canopy and made little pads to go down in the nacelle. And I should have showed this earlier, but I didn't. But it's already done. Right there you can see the thickness of that pad, which is, it's right here, right there at the bottom, all the way back. I used some welder's glue on the bottom, on the sides, but mostly CA for that one. I wanted that one to be secure as it could possibly be. And then on top of that, I scraped off the old glue as much as I could off of the old motor mounts, and I coated those guys with welder's glue. Those were definitely welded in with welder glue, and I put CA along the edges this time, not on the bottom of it, because it was really pulling off too much foam when you remove it. Hopefully I'll never have to do that again, but you never know. And I put these two popsicle sticks this time too, one up on the top where I had this one here before, and now also this one down here just to be safe, because there was some gaps, and I used as much welders as I could to fill those gaps. And I've done the same on the other side, and I gave it some downward tilt. Let's see if we can see that. The downward thrust is the stock setting for these, although some have said it doesn't really matter too much whether they're straight or downward tilt. There is slight downward angle on both of these, and I made sure they were both square as well. I first gave some consideration for the PVC pipe trick that you can see some people have done successfully online, but I didn't like how short it was in length and how much I had in gap around the sides. It probably would have been okay, but I wanted something that was longer, so I went with the stock motor mount. I could have tried the trick where you cut out some 1/8 inch plywood and make a circular cut for it to sit right on the front, and then cut this back, but I didn't opt to do that. I think this is pretty darn strong, and you let welders sit overnight for at least 6 hours, it's going to harden up and this whole area will be fine. And I think she's going to fly fine when I take the second maiden test here in the not too distant future. We're going to try the 9x5 props. I might still also try the 8x5s, but the 9x5 should maximize the 3S. The secondary thing is that I have these Turnigy ESCs. These are 30 amps. They have a 2 amp BEC, but that'll be disabled because of course we're running the BEC, the UBEC on the Vector. And I had to cut extra foam to make it fit in here. Some people will opt to mount them on the wing out here, which is probably fine too. I chose to keep them in there like the old Thunderbird amps, the 18 amp ones that I had. These are nice because they will support 4S. And with 4S I can stick with an 8x4 prop most likely on this plane. And I might move to a 4S battery in the near future. Something in the 4000 line probably. So I cut extra foam out of there, and I put a popsicle stick as an extra support, because this is pretty much flimsy now. Plus it's exposed because of the extra thickness of the capacitor parts here in the end of this. And I'm going to stick with the 3.5mm connectors, connect them up in there. I may shorten this lead ever so slightly. And you do have to program the Turnigys with the min and max kind of settings with the beeping. It's in the instruction manual. With the Thunderbirds you didn't have to, but with these guys you do. It's not that complicated from what it looks like, and I'll be doing that for the first maiden here, coming up soon. Okay, this is with the transmitter on. UZUhf, EZUhf, 8-channel Lite inside the plane connected to the Vector. Does not matter whether on the Vector or not. Still chatters like this, as far as I know, I think. Well, I'm not 100% positive. This is the pan pod area. That is actually connected directly to the receiver. It's not going through the Vector. And as you can see, it is just chattering all over the place. You can feel it right in there. And then the ailerons, which are going through the Vector. They're not as easy to see, but they are moving very slightly there. Take the Tyrannus NXD here, or X9D rather, and here you can see the various levels on the Tyrannus. And I turn it off, although I shouldn't really do that, but I'm going to. Okay, so Tyrannus is not on. And And now everything has come to life, although not centered because the Tyrannus isn't in play. But the cameras are not shaking. So when you turn the Tyrannus on, it becomes exponential. Again, these two are not going through the vector. Every other control surface is going through the vector. Okay, I decided to make a homemade BEC. Using the HobbyMate tester, I have connected the outlet of the primary port here to my old receiver. I used a ferrite core trying to do some inductance there on the line coming from this one servo down here, the pan module. It's the only thing connected, and as you can see, and my dying 72 megahertz transmitter in the background. Now, I can try moving this further away. It doesn't seem to make a difference. Of course, that was only a couple feet, but I've done 30 and 40 feet, and I still have this thing shaking. At this point, some weird things. Certain angles I turn this, it gets more jumpy, much more jumpy. Stop for a second, and then it's back. Okay, well, there you go. Jitter craziness. Here is a look at the pan tilt module. I have since replaced the pan tilt modules with the HS 65 MGs with two different ones, and now I do not have the jittering issue that was previously a problem. As you can see, we have no jittering, perfectly stable, looking good. And if I turn them, everything works, each extension. And what we have here on the tilt is a Turnigy MX-M801 analog micro MG, and that's 12 grams in weight. And then down, it's hard to see here, down there we have a Savix SH-0262, and that is a 13.6 gram super speed micro MG digital servo. The original HS MGs were about 12.47 grams in weight. So they're both comparable, and they do the job without all the jittering issues that I had previously. It seems to have gone away with these two modules. I wanted to do a little follow-up on the wing and a few things here. The Turnigy ESCs here, the 30 amps that I put in. You can see the final result of how I did that. They're right in there. I dug out a little more of the foam to make them fit. And the wiring, I kept the 3.5 millimeter connections on there, but just shrink wrap them for safety. That way if I ever have to swap the motors again, it'll be a lot quicker and a lot easier. And by the way, this here, I just took some PVC pipe foam filler stuff and used it to protect when I transport the plane. This comes in really handy for the props and also for like the ailerons. In this case, I've got two of them going on here plus one. The other one fell off when I was bringing it over here, but they get the job done. I shortened all the wires since then. There's not as much going down into the main fuselage. There's the other 30 amp, and the entire wing is now, of course, done with the wing spar mod. One spar here, another spar here, and then another one here, and another one here. I also put markers on for the center of gravity. It's a little beyond, I think, the 8.5 point centimeters where it normally is. I think I went a little bit beyond that. As some people mentioned, you have to go a little bit further back. And let's just take a look at the entire wing how she looks now that it's glued together. Lamination all the way across now, and so it feels pretty heavy in your hand. It certainly does. However, strong and sturdy, and I don't have to worry about it breaking off here with these clamps. I glued them right on as well. I just screw it down each time I fly, and I'm ready to go. Here's a look at my first full FPV flight from takeoff until landing. Unfortunately for this one, I didn't record in HD on the Runcam due to a glitch. As you can see, my takeoff amps were around 23 amps, which isn't bad given that the plane at this point weighed 74 ounces. And there was many others who had a similar build that were in the upper 20s on takeoff. Now this flight was again only on 3S, and I believe 9x5 counter-rotating HQ props. I went to 4S shortly after this video was made when I had a death spiral, when my miles per hour dropped to 21 and I went into a downward spin. I realized that I needed a little more oomph, so going to 4S provided that and got me up to close to 27 amps on takeoff. And I've been on 4S ever since. I did this flight November 11th of 2015. And aside from my V303 quad, which is really a X380 internals, by the way, I rarely actually do full FPV flights with the Twinstar to this date here in mid-2016. I've been trying out new locations to fly, and I do fly with the goggles on the V303 quad. It's nice and slow, it's an easy flyer, and it helps you get to know your surroundings. So at some point in the near future, I'll probably start doing the Twinstar flights more full goggles. At least get it up there and then put the goggles on. This flight worked out pretty well. I had spotters, which helped. The first time you fly FPV, it takes a lot of getting used to. You used to start staring at your plane from a fixed point, so you only need to be aware of the plane and nothing else. And then once you dive into this FPV world, you have to know the area and learn to use your on-screen display, in this case the vector. When I did this flight, I hadn't prepped well enough to know my directions on the OSD. I found myself asking spotters for help coming back around and staying in line of sight. I also didn't look at the numbers enough. I was nervously fixated on the center of the screen instead. By now, here in 2016, I've started to add OSD waypoints to the vector, which are handy. You can set the range to about 1,000 feet, and they'll spread out over your view so you know where the edges of your flying fields are. At any rate, you can see in the video the home arrow icon at the top. When it's red, it means you're moving away from home, and when the arrow is facing up in green, it means you're heading towards home. The center arrow is a radar arrow for waypoints, and we can take a look at the other parameters here on this pause screenshot right now. Here you can see in the upper left, we have the radio control transmitter signal quality. We have the RSSI at the top at 99. Link quality here is showing 100. And link quality is probably more useful than RSSI. Link quality gives you more. We can see the mode I'm currently flying at. In this example, it's 2D mode, and that's 2D heading hold. I usually take off now with 2D heading hold on. In the beginning, I had stabilize set to off for takeoffs. Now it's more stable of a takeoff to leave 2D heading hold on. And if you switch that to loiter, it'll say loiter or return to home. It'll say return to home or altitude hold when I toggle the Tyrannus. And again, in the upper middle part, we have the home arrow icon. In this case, it's pointing upward in green, meaning I'm heading towards home, which in this picture is right there at the bottom of your screen. That's the runway. And the volts, 12 volts. I try to shoot for 3.5 per cell on the landing after it's turned off. That's ideal. Usually you get about a half-volt jump from whatever you're seeing while the motors are spinning. And it varies, of course, for 4S. Now that I'm using 4S, the numbers are much bigger. And the amps in the upper right, and the amount of milliamp hours you've used, in this case 252 to this point in just 38 seconds, the timer on the left. On the left, we also have the speed. On the right, we have the altitude. Now on the bottom, we have the ground speed and the airspeed. And if we look at the ground speed and airspeed, if they're the same, that means there's probably not much wind. And using the pitot tube, if these numbers differ, you'll be able to tell whether the wind is against you or behind you. And the CD in the bottom right is your cumulative distance, and the number in the bottom left there, 603, that is your distance from home. So that is that's how it's all done. At this point, we're about 2 minutes into the flight, 2 minutes and 52 seconds. There you can see the lake below me, where I'm at in Pennsylvania here. Home arrow at the top there. We're starting to head back to home. There's the runway right below us there, here at the 3 minute 18 second mark. I'm passing the field. I'm skirting off to the right from my perspective. 38 miles an hour on the left, 220 feet. Still pulling a lot of amps at this point, around 13, so that means I've got the throttle kicking pretty high. And now that I've gone to 4S, I find that I don't want to put that throttle up too high, or she's really going to take off and fly fast. Now I find myself flying pretty much half stick with a 4S battery. And when I come down below that slightly, I'm usually around 8 amps, give or take. Here you can see I've engaged return to home, so I'm testing that. Homes are directly in front of me again, letting the plane fly itself. Now I took over at this point. I'm back to 2D heading hold. I just tested it very briefly. I think at one point here I did loiter mode as well. Bouncing around a lot. And since I've done this, even in more recent videos, I still have a problem with ailerons being a little oversensitive. I'm going to try on the Tyrannus setting a expo to, I'll start off with 20 and then I'll increase that maybe to 40 and see if I can't make it a little less sensitive on the sticks left and right on the aileron. That's my plan for this year anyway, or from here on out. Future flights. Getting a little crazy on the sticks, but I'm starting to line up for a landing. Yeah, I lined it up and brought it right in and had no real trouble. Came down pretty easily. The 4S, it takes a lot longer to land. Need more time to get her down. That's about it for the first flight and for this series of videos too. Hope you enjoyed the series of build videos and look for more on the website and YouTube channel in the future. Guys, and happy flying, everyone. Thanks for watching.